let's see, 145 people watched the YouTube video compared to the 44 which responded. Okay, so if you haven't responded, please raise your hand because you're going to do so now on paper.
Shane Tedder can hate you for wasting paper. So, alright, come on. If you're not honest, I'll look it up later. I don't know if people have writing utensils. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any because I don't use them. Alright, here we go. Anybody else? Alright. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Rhonda. So forward thinking. We're going to talk about some of your areas as being some of the most forward thinking.
I tried, Jack.
I know. Let's see.
Connie, did you say you tried? I did too.
You have to sign in at the top right hand corner, and it should say participate in this survey.
Okay.
All right.
Said all that.
All right. Here, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you guys out some, and you guys can pass them around as need be, so I can get back up here. All right. All right. Now, because I'm sure people didn't write them down, survey questions are here. So, number one, please number them. How many people live in your household? Number two, how many computers are in your household? These don't have to be complex numbers. Just, 1, 2, 3. A couple people have 10 computers in their homes. I'm going to blame the people in IT in the back for that one. How many cell phones are in your household? Do you have internet access on your computer at home? Do you use internet access on your phone? Do you text message on your cell phone? Do you have a blog, Facebook, MySpace? Yes to any of those. If you have one, that's a yes. And then any questions you may have, and we'll put all these in. The reason this is important is because these will all go into SharePoint, and you will all be able to see and discuss some of the questions that are proposed later. Okay, important business. So I'll give you guys a second. And it feels like a test, doesn't it? You have to pass them to the front when you're done. Hey, Sydney, how's it going? Pass them to the center so I can get them from everybody. You guys need more time. Thank you, Abby. All right. Okay. So, I would have liked it if you all would have gotten on the site, and some of you tried, and I appreciate that. So, what are we really here to talk about? We're really here to talk about the important developments in technology since the last time we talked. The last time we talked, I told everybody, if you don't know what Facebook and MySpace are, you will. Here we are. So some of the important developments that have come along in the past year, 2 years, particularly the advancements, one of the most important things we're going to be discussing is the advancements in cellular technology, particularly internet applications, where cell phones are always on. That's one of the big key points that we want to hit on today. GPS and geotagging, knowing where you are, where things are, all the time, tying into Google Earth. We'll get into that. Of course, this is all because of iPhone popularity. Everybody knows somebody with an iPhone. Also, we'll talk briefly about social networking advancements, again touching on the changes in MySpace and Facebook. We'll talk about wikis. If you've been under a rock or you haven't taken a class in about 5 years, Wikipedia is kind of hot. And we'll talk about some other collaborative environments, such as Photosynth and some user-generated content areas. And we'll also touch on blogs and microblogs and get into Twitter and that kind of fun stuff. So this is for everybody who brought their iPhone today because they absolutely couldn't live without it. So, what do our students currently have access to? Google. When I asked students, I asked staff, I asked tons of people, I said, where do you get your information? And they said one thing. They said, my remote's not working. The answer was Wikipedia and Google. I had to ask, I probably got to person number 20 before I got an answer other than Wikipedia or Google. So then people started giving me answers like Yahoo Answers, JSTOR. All these articles are up on the SharePoint site, which we'll send out an email about later. This entire presentation, it's got the links throughout it. So if there's any of these things like JSTOR that you may have not heard of, it's an area for research journal articles. You can download this presentation right off SharePoint. It's available to everybody. Access it, get to these links. Some other things that were brought up were ebooks. And one thing that I thought was interesting was a student talked to me and said, I find it really helpful. This was a graduate student that's been here for a while, that now you can access different books at different libraries. If the downtown library doesn't have a book that you need, you simply say, I want that at the downtown library over the internet. And by the next day, it's there. Of course, the other thing students have that we're going to talk about, internet everywhere via cellular, and a wealth of friends online. If I don't know the answer to something or I can't get internet access where I am, I can call my buddy Chris in West Virginia, who is constantly connected with everything. And he doesn't leave his house. So let's talk about what students have today. This is a video by a professor at Kansas State University named Mike Wesch. Mike Wesch is a professor of anthropology who he is on my YouTube channel. All these things are linked from the SharePoint. If you need any of this information, my YouTube channel, this presentation, Mike Wesch's YouTube channel, it's all on the SharePoint site. We'll get that out later. This is a video Mike Wesch did with some of his students in his anthropology class, kind of talking about what students are about today. So I want you guys to kind of check this out. Sorry, let me switch it to high quality first, and let me say one thing. People have asked me for years, for the past few years, on how to embed a YouTube video in PowerPoint. I did a Google search for embed YouTube video in PowerPoint, and I watched a YouTube video on how to embed YouTube videos. So I'm sitting there watching it thinking, this is the definition of irony. Sorry, it's kind of quiet. The music's not really important. While this is playing, I'll tell you really quickly, Mike Wesch, has a introduction to YouTube that he gave to the Library of Congress that if you have 55 minutes of time to spare, it's probably one of the most interesting videos I've seen online in the last year. If you want to know about YouTube, I actually had to take out my YouTube slide as it made me go a little over my time. So he put up a collaborative Google environment to let his students respond. Sorry, the video's a little choppy because I'm running about 100 things in the background. This isn't even my laptop. Thanks, Dean Hazard. That's going to be important. That point, I think, is a key one, that our students today are preparing for jobs that don't exist yet.
Yeah, it's good.
Now,
Probably.
so that's Dr. Wesh, by the way. All right, so what are the students looking for? They have no time, they're multitasking, they're looking for categorization, organization, other funization words. But more than that, students want data that's malleable, that they can change and modify and categorize the way they see fit, because every person is going to see a piece of data differently. We'll get into how Wikipedia makes that possible here in just a minute, because we all know that the best sorting and categorizing machine is the human brain. That's why those little wavy line CAPTCHAs we can decipher and computers can't, because we can see patterns where they're just vaguely existing. So what do they need? Grouping, which I define as sorting for the self, and we see grouping in, oh, my slides are out of order, my notes. Grouping, which is sorting for the self, which we see in Facebook by nature. Things are grouped into, Kentucky, the University of Kentucky, Lexington, these sorts of organizations that are part of the nature of Facebook. The new version of MySpace, previously you were unable to sort people into groups and categorize people to different levels of access, but now you can. For instance, my MySpace, I have a roller derby group because I'm friends with a lot of roller derby people. So it allows them to have certain access to my profile that other people might not, and that kind of thing. Like, they get to see their roller derby pictures. Tagging, which is the filtering for everyone. We're all familiar. I think most of the respondents said that they have a Facebook or MySpace. So tagging images, and you can now tag images in the new MySpace 2.0. Tagging images on Facebook is something that I think everybody is kind of familiar with. They've all been tagged in an image and then thought, remove tag. Other types of tags, geotags, particularly on Google Earth. We're going to get into this in depth here in a minute. Flickr allows you to geotag images so that they will show up in Google Earth and in other GPS-centric services. So, and finally, we can talk about tagging articles. I don't know how many people are going to be familiar with these. People might be more familiar with Fark.com, which is started by a Lexington native. Again, all these links. Dig, Technorati. What these sites do is they allow people to categorize. They categorize it as, oh, funny, chimp, dancing, all these kinds of things. And by these categories, this is part of sort of the Web 2.0 structure, is allowing users to all input categories and using the popular ones as the actual categorization. Wikipedia does this. So, this brings us to the dawn of cellular internet. Ooh. So, I looked long and hard for information that would that I could cite for these things, and unfortunately, there's no direct citations I could find. But we can say, those of us in IT can say pretty justly that instant messages cut down our amount of email. We now have instant messaging clients that are official clients for campus. OCS, we'll take a look at that towards the end. T9 messaging cuts down on cell phone usage. There's actually a study that's done on this, and so one of the things I think that really shows sort of the generational difference. My daughter recently had a birthday. She's my stepdaughter, and she, her mother asked her, we were at dinner, and she said, "How many phone calls? How many people called to wish you a happy birthday?" She said, 4. And her mother looked and thought, well, that seems low. And then I looked, knowing the difference, and said, "How many people text messaged you? How many people posted on your MySpace?" And she goes, "Oh, dozens." And this is just the way these students, these future university students, are communicating now. Okay, this slide has a lot of stuff, and I'm sorry. Some important facts to note: 57% of the Generation Unplugged survey that this came from was, I think, 1,000 teens aged 13 to 19. One of the things I wanted to do in this presentation, none of the data that you're seeing is more than a year and a half old, because I think if it's more than a year and a half old, might as well throw it out. It doesn't apply anymore. So this comes from spring of last year. I'm sorry, fall of last year. Spring, yeah. Spring of last year, 57% agree or somewhat agree that cell phone has improved the quality of life. 57% of smartphone users and 29% of regular cell phone users say they carry a cell phone because it's how they stay connected to their world, which means their world is communication. How can we facilitate this? So, some other interesting statistics I pulled out of this. This, like I said, slide's full, but let's just look at a couple. 59% of smartphone users, 39% say that it is an indicator of their personal style. It is ranked second only to clothing in the determination of social status. This slide is one that I think really pulls a lot of interesting facts to light as far as this whole study is really interesting. Talks a lot about younger children. The 13 to 15-year-olds were far more focused on the aspects of their phone that allowed them to connect in new ways. They wanted GPSs. They wanted more advanced text messaging. Younger children actually preferred text messaging to voice chat, to talking on their phones, by a huge margin compared to the 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, the 13 to 15-year-olds. So these are the students that we have to think about that are going to be here, in a couple of years. And one of the things they said is they wanted a phone that would do GPS and open their documents and let them remote desktop to their computers and all these kinds of things. So I threw in the pointy-haired boss because everybody wants a doohickey. So the primary uses, of course, which I think these fall in line with what a lot of people do, email and social networking sites, in that order, email far above anything else, actually. So they desire this constant connectivity that is only going to grow. If we think the students that we have now are connected, we have no idea how bad it's going to be, how in touch they're going to be with each other. And that's one of the big things. One of the other parts of that study that was so interesting, they said students are not texting to save money. They're not texting because it's easier. They're texting because it lets them multitask. That is the number one reason they gave, multitasking. And as we can see from the video earlier, multitasking is one of the key things our students are doing now. So, these younger students, they want to be able to talk to 10 friends at once. One of the people in the study said, why would I make a phone call when in the same amount of time that I'm on that phone call, I can tell 10 people things via text message? I can't remember the exact quote, but it was essentially, I can talk to 10 people in the time it takes me to call one. So let's look at sort of this new collaborative environment that these students are entering. What are collaborative environments? Well, Wikipedia is a collaborative environment that collaborates everyone in the world into an encyclopedia-type environment. Photosynth, we're going to get into these more in depth, so I'll just touch on them real quick. Photosynth, which is a Microsoft product. Google Earth, gaming environments. This is from Sony's Little Big Planet. I like video games. So here's the obligatory Wikipedia slide. I think, raise your hand if you have not used Wikipedia. I'll send you a link. Okay, so what's the good thing about Wikipedia? The largest source of research information on the internet. It is typically 1.5 times longer, article-wise, word-wise, than an Encyclopedia Britannica article. The difference is Encyclopedia Britannica doesn't have articles like episodes of Lost. So it's the amount is so much more. Again, this Web 2.0 style of linking that happens in Wikipedia. For instance, I follow a particular actress, and she gets married. And she's linked in all kinds of articles to all the movies she's ever been in. Well, in the old HTML style, if her name changed, God, somebody has to go through and edit every one of those pages. Well, that's crazy. Any webmaster would want to die. But in the Web 2.0, they simply change her name, and her marker is changed throughout the entire site. So her name suddenly changes for every web page she's in, pulling dynamically out of their database. If anybody wants to talk about that further, talk to me after this. Okay, so Wikipedia is awesome, but it's not. Just like anything else, it's sort of like phoning a friend. Anything that anybody posts, they may be an expert in it, they may not. So, a lot of people say citing Wikipedia is like citing your very wise grandmother. She might know what she's talking about, but the snake oil, not so much. The bad part is you will find more errors in a Wikipedia article. If you were to compare it directly with an Encyclopedia Britannica article, there are by number more, but by word less, because the articles are 1.5 times longer. They might contain, let's say, a Wikipedia article contains 6 errors, where Encyclopedia Britannica would contain 5. But the Wikipedia article is 1.5 times larger, so it kind of evens out. Wikipedia, great. Photosynth. Photosynth is something that I don't think a lot of you are going to be familiar with. Raise your hand if you know what Photosynth is. A couple, okay. All right, now let's pull up Photosynth. So this is a really popular one I'm about to pull up that was done right after President Obama's inauguration. CNN got everyone together and they said, the moment that the president-elect raises his hand, we want you all to take a picture and email it to us. So the thousands and thousands of people there took photos, emailed them directly to CNN, and within 1 hour, they had a photosynth available. Now what this is a collaborative environment where 2D images are rendered in a 3D way. Now, this is not the best example in the world, but we'll get to a better example here in just a minute. So I can move this and look at different areas. Oops. Oh, my remote's not doing so hot. Knew I should change the batteries before I got here. But, we can see in a three-dimensional way all kinds of different angles of the same subject at the exact same time. And so what Photosynth does is it says, okay, I know this picture was taken here, and then it can extrapolate all of the angles from one picture. So as you can see, what it boils down to is a heck of a lot of pictures. Those can be as high resolution or low resolution. They can be as high as a 24 megapixel camera or as low resolution as a cell phone. So that's pretty wild and crazy. And here's one that you guys might recognize a little more readily. I was going to ask you to guess what it is, but sorry. So here's Thoroughbred Park. And we can rotate. See this, I don't know if you guys can see through my head here, but see this circle? It allows me to rotate the image to a new area that I want to view. Let's go this way. Yeah. So I can view any kind of aspect of the park, and if we back up, we can actually see, you can see the outline of the trees that are rendered, those points. The software does this all automatically. The longer that we let it sit, the more it will render out of these photos. You can see
from one picture.
It's a collaboration of pictures. You set one picture and say, this is my initial picture. And then every picture, you have to take pictures that sort of link to it. But every picture that you take links to it, the software then ties it together. So this is a collaborative photographic environment where, before, one person could never do this. One person could never stitch all these together before. Not in a million years. So, oops.
So Jack, on this particular example, how many still photos were made of Thoroughbred Park?
Of Thoroughbred Park, 373. Oops. So, that's kind of an idea of a collaborative photographic environment that was not possible a couple of years ago. We would have never thought to work in this manner. Okay, and of course, everybody loves Google Earth. I have the link to the SharePoint, which I've actually already loaded because I'm nervous. This is a tour that my daughter made. I wanted to start here in 206 Student Center where we are today. And I thought, let's look at some geotag things. What could we possibly look at? Oh, there's that. Jeez, how cool. So let's look, what else is being geotagged? Well, there's something in the Student Center. What could that be? That's information about the Student Center that we never posted, that a user put up. That's where you get your wildcard. We never put that on Google Earth. Users are doing our jobs for us. Again, like Wikipedia, maybe we want to do a little better job. Student Government actually has multiple geotagged videos on Google Earth. Very good. Might recognize these two from a little while back. I wanted to look at some other areas of campus to kind of see what else do we have, available. We see some other YouTube videos. Unfortunately, I haven't set this laptop quite correctly to see all of the videos that are here. This is a SG video on how to upload YouTube videos. You'll see a theme. So, there's all kinds of this geotag data around campus that we're not participating in. And, one would think that would be kind of our job, is to mark the things here on campus that we know. I mean, imagine how much easier it would be if we geotagged every building like Student Center is geotagged. So that, students could say, geez, where is Alumni Gym? Oh, it's right there. I know what it looks like now.
Does this mean we won't have to do Superstart?
I love Superstart. Keep that dream alive. Again, the UK Library. I'd hope most students would be able to figure that one out, but
Show you how to get into Ovid?
Thinking ahead. We're gonna talk about that. So these are just a couple of the geotag things on campus. This laptop isn't set to actually show all of the YouTube videos and things that are available. There are tons, some not so G-rated, I'll just go ahead and warn you. Those are mostly tagged in the residence halls. Not bad, there's just some language. Just some language, people. Okay. So how is Google Earth affecting our world? Well, obviously, it's pulling our world and making it a lot smaller. For instance, my daughter, in her Arts and Humanities class, one of their assignments was to use the SketchUp program, which is what Google Earth uses to build buildings, like the 3D buildings that you see in Google Earth. I'm assuming a lot of you have used Google Earth. The 3D buildings are built with this SketchUp program, which is essentially a CAD program for those of you who go back that far. Computer-assisted drafting, which years ago was something very daunting and people went to engineering school for. And now, my 17-year-old daughter uses it. So that's not to speak ill of anybody, in engineering or anybody that has done CAD before. It's just simply that as user-generated content systems advance, they make it easier and quicker to make complex experiences for the end user. So, children, kids can model buildings in Google Earth. They're doing, again, our job for us. So let's get into something fun. Video games. Games like Little Big Planet that I showed you the screenshot of earlier are their own form of YouTube. Users can create content, rate content. One of the things, Media Molecule, the company that created Little Big Planet, when they first created the game, they made some levels. And they were like, oh, making levels is pretty fun. Well, then they made a couple levels, they played them, and then they wanted their coworkers to play them, so they sent the levels out. Well, their friends in other developing agencies said, well, can you send us the level builder? I think I can build a better level. And so they did just that. They built, and then they sent them back to the guys at Media Molecule with Little Big Planet, and they said, wow, these levels are fantastic. And they quickly realized that the user-generated content that they could create, the levels that other people would create, are just more creative than what the publisher is going to create. So they made that the central focus of the game, is building the level, and playing and rating the level is done on the internet. You can actually record YouTube videos of your level and put it on your YouTube channel, all automatically, seamlessly in the PlayStation 3. Another collaborative gaming environment is Second Life. Second Life is its own world. They have an economy. You can buy a shirt in Second Life. You will never wear that shirt, but you can buy one that will go on your avatar. What Second Life is kind of fading in popularity because of PlayStation Home. PlayStation Home is sort of the new, it's like Second Life, but in high definition. And it's full of gamers with sort of the same goals and viewpoints. You know, they're typically playing the same games. And Sony is using this basically as a marketing tool to get high definition content. Hey, school. That's not a slide. Okay, all the Mac users can make fun of me now. It's okay. I'll go ahead and I'll take it. Ah, goodness. That's okay. Yeah, exactly. Hurry, somebody call somebody and oh, man. Always forget these things.
Jack, was that your avatar up there?
As a matter of fact, that was my avatar. And as soon as this boots back up, I'll show it to you again. Yes, that was my avatar in actually Xbox Live has their service as well. The Xbox Live service kind of got on this avatar bandwagon after Nintendo Wii, PlayStation Home. They thought, you know, gosh, everybody really likes creating a persona and a character. So they began doing just that. They allow their users to create a 3D persona, even though that persona never interacts with anything. Kids love it. Love it. They love to put clothes on their avatars, even though the only person that will ever see that are just their friends. I mean, they sell, again, you know, you can buy a shirt and pay for a shirt in Xbox Live that will go on your avatar and just be seen by your 10 friends. Yeah, I mean, it's real money. It's cash money. I apologize about the technical difficulties. I'd point the finger, but just, yeah. I'd just like to say to all those people that are not here with IT, I will never live this down. So, that... Yes, UK bought an island in Second Life that has, if I'm correct, the W.T. Young Library as well as some other buildings in it.
You know, art museum, I think, or some, and it's in fact that's a good use of our funds, and in fact it's a fad, and it continues to segue, and now people want PlayStation.
Well, I'll get your question in just a second. The answer to that is, Second Life is a good investment in Lexington because while the community as a whole might be declining slightly, Lexington, at least a couple of years ago, was one of the largest cities in the world in Second Life. We were something like 4th largest in the world for our population in Second Life. That means more people in Lexington were playing Second Life than in Chicago or some other large cities. You know, I think New York, San Francisco, and some other places were ahead of us, and maybe like Tokyo. But past that, you know, we had a very large community, and there's some question about why that is. But as far as it being something to deal with, you know, doing it here in Lexington is probably the best place, one of the best places to do it, because we have a fairly small, close populace. Most of the people that are on it are probably going to be here on campus. So
why would you want to be on Second Life?
Why would you want to be on Second Life? That is an excellent question. A lot of people feel that Second Life is a way to, we'll get into this here in a moment, ask questions. People with social anxiety use it actually a lot. I know a couple Second Life users that will ask questions in Second Life they would not ask in person. Microsoft and some other big companies actually have help desks in Second Life. Hold on one second. You had a question?
Well, I'm from the Teaching and Academic Sports Center, as is Brad McDaniels over there, and he actually helped with the UK Second Life Ireland. And I'll turn around and say that the misconception, there is, a balance between some of the social events that we might host over there, but it's being primarily used as, at least we're exploring some of the options that might be available within Second Life as an alternate learning environment.
Yes.
Right now, even though we have the library on there, the library has hosted a number of exhibits and also some discussion groups and presentations. And, I think if you had to think about a disadvantage, one disadvantage would be that if you wanted to attend these things, that you would have to be an avatar. And the learning curve on learning how to be an avatar can sometimes be quite daunting. So I'll be the first to admit that. But in addition to that, we've gone ahead, and I know that the art school, for example, has had student exhibits on there. And right now we are working on a project which is for an anatomy class. This class is a rather large class, and as you know, given some of the budget constraints, lab space is also an issue over here on campus. So what happens is we've got an anatomy lab over there that we're creating, which all these students, and I think it's for a 300 level, will be able to come and participate in. The current building that's there is divided into 3 areas, depending on the area of anatomy that the students will be studying in. We're hoping to get this tested, if not by summer, at least by fall of this coming year. So there are some, we're trying to make sure that at least with the UK Second Life Ireland, that we don't just make it a novelty. There has to be some educational effects and implications on it. It has to be effective. Michigan is also doing similarly. So, once again, I just wanted to, put to rest any concerns that some of us might have over the fact that why are we going in this gaming environment? It really is something that's been looked at as an alternate learning space.
Right, and that's one of the points is, she makes an excellent point. We have this preconceived notion that people can't learn things in a video game. Well, I would argue you're wrong, really wrong. So, again, like I said, the Second Life community, the PlayStation Home community, these areas, these up-and-coming 3D environments, I feel they're going to continue to gain popularity. So, again, we briefly went over Xbox Live. There's my cool avatar. He has a smirk. Let's go ahead and go forward, and we'll deal with more questions at the end, I promise. Okay, so next, let's talk about Twitter. Raise of hands, who knows what Twitter is? More than I thought. All right, well, this is an example. This is kind of a brief video done by a group called Commoncraft that does sort of like paper cutouts to explain complex ideas with simple paper cutouts. So this is to kind of help you get an idea of what Twitter is. We're going to go through this, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about microblogs and Twitter.
So, what are you doing?
Oh, but I forgot.
It's one of the first questions we often ask friends and family. Even if the answer is just mowing the lawn or cooking dinner, it's interesting to us. It makes us feel connected and a part of each other's lives. Unfortunately, most of our day-to-day lives are hidden from people that care. Of course, we have email and blogs and phones to keep us connected, but you wouldn't send an email to a friend to tell them you're having coffee. Your friend doesn't need to know that. But what about people that want to know about the little things that happen in your life? Real life happens between blog posts and emails, and now there's a way to share. This is Twitter in plain English. Thanks to Twitter, it's possible to share short, bite-sized updates about your life and follow the updates of people that matter to you via the web. Here's how it works. Meet Carla. She's addicted to her mobile phone, reads blogs every day, and has contacts all over the world. She heard about Twitter and was skeptical. After some of her friends couldn't stop talking about it, she gave it a try. She signed up for free and saw that Twitter pages look a little like blogs with very short posts. Each page is personal and has updates from friends. She got started by looking up her friends on Twitter.com. After finding a few, she clicked follow to start seeing their updates on her Twitter page. Within hours, she began to see a different side of people she chose to follow. She didn't know that Steven in Seattle was a baseball fan, or that Julia in London was reading a new investment book. The little messages from Twitter painted a picture of her friends, family, and coworkers that she'd never seen before. It was the real world. Soon, she became a fan of Twitter and posted updates every day. Her friends followed her updates and learned that she recently discovered a passion for Van Halen. They could see Carla's life between blog posts and emails. For Carla, Twitter worked because it was simple. The updates were always short, under 140 characters. Plus, she could post updates and follow her friends using the Twitter website, software on her browser, a mobile phone, or instant messages. By asking members to answer the question, "What are you doing?" Carla found that Twitter brought her closer to people that matter to her, 140 characters at a time. Find out what your friends are doing at twitter.com. I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Twitter in Plain English on the Common Craft Show.
Okay, so I apologize, the audio was a little soft. I didn't, that was my fault for not talking to the AV people to hook it up previously. So what is Twitter? Twitter is the definition of a microblog. What is a microblog? Who here is on Facebook? Most of you. Okay. The status updates on Facebook are a microblog. That's the way to think about it. Twitter was kind of born out of Facebook microblogging. People realized, gosh, you know, I get more out of, you know, him saying he's eating a peanut butter sandwich than his blog. He never mentioned in his blog that he likes peanut butter and banana sandwiches. You know, I hear Elvis Presley like that. So, let me pull up Twitter real fast. I had all these pulled up before.
Twitter came after Facebook?
Twitter, yes. Twitter came after Facebook, and it's the whole idea behind it is, let's get signed in here, is just to give brief updates about your world. Now,
Do you have to pay for Twitter?
no, absolutely not. Twitter is free. Right now, they're working on advertising to help, you know, pay the bills for Twitter. But right now, Twitter is free. So, to give you an idea, this is my Twitter page. These are the people. These are the people I'm following, as well as my own Twitter updates. You know, my friend Lindsay. Thank goodness for TV remotes. Penn Gillette from Penn and Teller. I'm writing one of my food articles for Maximum. I'm going to start tasting all the regional brands of breakfast cereal. You know, some people might not find that interesting, but some might. Now, what makes Twitter interesting and different is that Twitter can be updated via a cell phone, via text messaging, not via internet on the cell phone, because as our little small study proved, about 50% of people who have phones don't have internet on their phones. So I expect that number is going to go up, but right now it's a bar from allowing people to interact with the internet, you know, in real time. So let's go back to the SharePoint, and I can show you. One of the things that Twitter allows me to do is to post dynamically here on SharePoint. I have my Twitter dumping into SharePoint. I can tell you, if you stop by here, I can tell you, I really should have put my notes into slides last night. Darn sleep. Presentations make me nervous. I'm going to delete this. That was a test from last night. I would get a lot more done if my kitties would stop meowing and let me practice my lecture in peace. So, you know, this is exactly what composed of my updates. So I can update this from here on the web page, which is where most of my updates come from. There are a lot of people here, and not enough chairs. Update. Okay, So I can pop over here into my SharePoint, do a little refresh, excuse me. There are a lot of people here and not enough chairs. Now, some other cool things here on the SharePoint, just to point out really quick. You might also notice this is a live camera feed from my office. I was actually trying to set up a live camera feed from here, but some problems with connection on the wireless. I couldn't quite get that to fly. So I had James run back and throw the camera in the office and start it. Go, go, go. You know. And so he did that. And so there's my desk. It's clean. Take a picture. With the timestamp. This is live. Student Affairs Admin Office. So these kinds of things, like what this cost me, like the software was maybe $30. And suddenly we've got a web page with dynamic content. Content that I can update right now.
SharePoint, is that part of UK's thing?
Yes, SharePoint is a UK thing. Actually, one of the SharePoint admins is here with us. I won't give his name right yet because he might kill me, but if you want to talk about SharePoint, come and talk to me. So let's update Twitter. There we go. Let's see. Now let's go ahead and just refresh here. As they can possibly get it. Well, here it is. You know, this is right now. So these are things that, you know, like I said, the cost of all this was the cost for that webcam software. That's it. That's all that was paid for. So what else can we talk about as far as getting our content to our students? Oop. I guess I should be on my slide before I hit forward. Mobile sites. Now, we've been talking about data immersion, videos, pictures, blogs, all kinds of wild stuff. But in reality, phones and mobile browsers are gaining strength, but not nearly as powerful as pretty much any computer browser. For instance, my PSP. It has a very, very stripped-down version of a web browser on it. Now, I can pull up pretty much any website on here, except the problem with that is a lot of them won't work because they're media rich, and frankly, the screen's not that big. It's hard to read. It's difficult to deal with. So, you know, I can instead view a mobile site, which is simply a stripped down version of the site we were looking at. So earlier we were looking at SharePoint. Let's go back and look at SharePoint again. So this is the SharePoint site. It's rich, it's got a lot of content, we got a lot of stuff going on. Now let's look at that same SharePoint site. One of the cool things that SharePoint does is for every website that you set up in SharePoint, it develops a mobile version automatically. This is all part of the automation that we really need to focus on going forward. Is we need to take put the work on the machine and not let us have to worry about maintaining two different. Before we would have had to maintain a mobile website and another, a real content website. But here I can do everything. Oh, look at that! Here's the brief description of my student affairs development meeting, and I can go into that. Text only, very simple, easy to browse on a cell phone. So.
This is what you see on a cell phone or the PSP?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And simply, it's just simply going to whatever the website is in SharePoint. Like, for instance, ours is sharepoint.uky.edu/studentaffairs, and then you can go to /m, and it will take you to the mobile version of that site. So, /m, and it redirects to this mobile site. So, while we are talking about media richness and content diversity and all those kinds of fun things, one of the things we need to think about is the limits of technology. We have all this cool technology, but there are limits. And the cell phone browsers, the mobile browsers that are out, those are kind of the current limits. I can also, access my shared documents where I have the student affairs presentation as well as the Google Earth map there that can be, downloaded. So let's go back and talk about it. Okay, so that's sort of the idea behind a mobile site, is a stripped down version. The other thing is that frankly, it's hard to enter stuff in this. It's hard, and sometimes it's hard to enter stuff in a cell phone when you're having to type with a keypad. Now, predictive text is great, but typically when you're putting in a URL, predictive text doesn't work. So, you have to say, W, wait, W, wait, you get the idea. It takes a long time. So, this group came up with an ingenious idea, tinyurl.com. Tinyurl.com will take whatever website you want and make it tiny. Pretty self-explanatory. So here, see before, if I were to go to this in, so let's say a cell phone, I would have to type in HTTP SharePoint UKYE/studentaffairs/m. It's a lot of stuff. That's probably 80, or say I wanted to post this on my Twitter. Twitter limits to 140 characters, not one more. So this is probably 80-some characters of my 140 character post. That's more than half my blog right there. Well, wouldn't it be better if it was this? And it is. So, if we go to, I've already done this, if we go to tinyurl.com/this, if you go to tinyurl.com, we'll go through it, it takes us straight to the mobile site. So if we go, I'll just show you exactly what I'm talking about. tinyurl.com. Make a long URL tiny. And all you have to do is pick, let's pick the student affairs site. Pop that into tinyurl. Paste. Let's make that tiny. Yeah, we're going to allow access to my clipboard. So there's our tiny URL. tinyurl.com/ASBOX3. You know what? I'm going to send that out on my Twitter. You guys should really check. I can't type. SharePoint. Boop. Update. And so now anyone that follows me just got this tiny URL linked to our SharePoint. Easy peasy.
Do those expire?
These expire, I think, after, gosh, I can't recall the length of time. It's quite a while. It's well over a month or 2 months before they expire. So typically, and again, if you want to talk about live content, by then a month is 100 posts ago. So, and if you think that I post a lot on Twitter, I really haven't posted that much. However, one of my buddies, he posts pretty proficiently, 1,694 Twitter updates. You name somebody that has that many blogs, you're not going to find them. Or if you do, they'll be in their house blogging. Okay, so okay, so we have all these cool technologies, all this new stuff. This is all kind of the things our students are looking to do. What happens when those things go away? This slide kind of has a lot of information. These are quotes out of a journal called The Future of Children. This is an article called Online Communication and Adolescent Relationships. And some of the things they talked about are the uses of teen text messaging, which I thought were actually pretty interesting. Chatting, of course. Planning events. Coordinating communication was the third most popular thing. And you think, well, that's having conversations about having conversations. That seems silly. But then you think about all the time that you spend emailing about meetings. You're chatting about chatting. So, really, these students are doing exactly what we're doing. Teens ended almost all cell phone or almost all text message conversations by switching to another style of communication via face-to-face or voice chatting. They never just stopped text messaging out of the blue. It was always going to another medium. So 80% of those surveyed used the internet to maintain existing friendship networks. The ones that participated with friends on the internet felt closer. This is why we need to become involved in, we're here for students, and we want students to feel close to us. I mean, in residence life, as an RA or as a hall director, you want your students to be able to come to you. And students who felt online communication was more effective for self-disclosure, we're closer with their friends, and they'll be closer with their hall directors and with their RAs. So these are things we need to think about, is communicating online to maintain those friendships. Now, one of the questions that my wife brought up when I was practicing incessantly last night, she said, well, what about kids who talk to strangers? Now, the interesting thing about that is this study showed that children typically don't talk to strangers. Almost something like 95% of the people that kids talk to online are people they have met in the real world first. They use it to maintain relationships, not to create them. I mean, strictly. They will never friend somebody on Facebook. They won't friend them on MySpace. They won't add their Twitter until they've met them in real life. So this is something that they've met them in school or any of these kind of environments. So it was something the study talked about. So one of the other things they talked about was the effects of banning these technologies, because the knee-jerk reaction is, well, I don't understand it, so we're just not going to do it. Well, when they banned some social networking sites, and some of the students as well as staff members, they felt that the internet was unduly restricted. 117 of the 120 surveyed said that. Some staff and students admitted they used techniques to get around the filter or blocks. Think about that, WAN guys. Many respondents felt the filtering system hampered their performance of their duties, created an inconvenience, reduced student autonomy, lowered morale, and made it less likely they would create lessons that would integrate technology. Of course, we want to go the opposite way. So, what's coming? This is the crazy stuff to blow your mind. Video and photo geotagged blogging. I can tell you right now that one of my friends just bought a dog collar that takes photos. And you can set the interval. Every 15 minutes to half an hour, it takes a photo. Now, probably what those photos consist of are the dog bed and drool. But there was actually a jewelry maker / techie about a year ago who created a necklace because he said, gosh, I'm so forgetful. And he made himself a micro camera necklace that has a camera built into a little pendant. So everywhere he walked around, it would take a picture every 30 seconds or, every minute of who he was talking to. So he could then go back and recall his conversations. Now, so that exists. This is there. What if we tie in GPS with that? Think about geotagging photos as kids walk around campus. And think about students that might be wearing something like this in the future that would be geotagging photos as they go around campus, and think, how is that going to add into Google Earth? When suddenly there are hundreds of photos that are tagged everywhere. I mean, you can know what something looked like at any time of the day. Google actually, in the newest version of Google Earth, they have a time that you can actually change the time that you look at a particular area.
So when you go to the locker room,
Yeah.
it's not even worried about cell phones now. They could be anywhere. That's great.
Well, I will admit. But now, in the other thing to think about is, currently GPS technology is limited. You can't get it in a building. So, they couldn't tag it as being in the gym. I don't know if that gives you any solace. I'm sorry. Okay, you want to get really wild and crazy and talk about, paranoia? Google Latitude. Google Latitude, I'm not the paranoid type, but Google Latitude is something that can run on the new mobile phones. It runs on Windows Mobile, runs on the iPhone, and of course runs on Google's Android phones. Google Latitude is a program that Google has designed. Everybody's familiar with instant messaging, right? You got a friends list. You can say, hey, what you doing? Where you at? Well, before we would never ask where someone was at because they were at home at the internet, of course. Now, we ask where someone's at. In comes Google Latitude. If you have Google Latitude running on your phone and your friends have Google Latitude running on their phone, I can look and say, oh, my buddy Brent, he's in his office because his GPS is telling me exactly where he's at. Or he knows that I'm late to lunch because I'm actually down the street. I'm not at Pazos or at Student Center yet, or so we can go. This is something to think about. People elect to tell these things. People are concerned about privacy, but this is not something that anyone can do. You have to elect to do it. So. Some other things to think about. Geotag photosynth. We saw the photosynth and how a three-dimensional rendering can be created out of two-dimensional images. Let's take that to the next level. Think about that in Google Earth. Instead of having to model a tree, if there were simply enough pictures of a tree outside of Student Center, that tree could get modeled automatically through pictures. They would never have to go into a modeling program like my daughter did to build a building. There would simply just have to be enough pictures of the building to model itself. So that's something to kind of think about. A lot of people see augmented reality and think, ooh, that sounds futuristic. Augmented reality is already here. Augmented reality is taking something like a cell phone. Google has a program that's out. I'm not familiar what the official name is, but one of the beta names was Inken. And you could take your phone. Fortunately, I have an old cell phone at home also. You could take your phone and you could start up Inken, and it would say, okay, I'm starting the camera. And while it starts the camera, it also starts the compass and the GPS. So your compass tells you what direction you're facing. The GPS tells where you're at, on the Earth. So now Google can say, I know where you're looking and I know where you're at. And then it will overlay Google Earth information into the camera of your phone. So suddenly your camera doesn't just have a picture of the door, let's imagine we're outside. It would have a picture that would show an arrow to, I want to get to the hospital. Click. And it will show the hospital over there in the distance with an arrow down to it. And walking directions to how to get there. Because I'm walking, I'm not driving. So these are things that are coming, ways to sort of interface with the world that we're just not used to. So that's something to think about as far as augmented reality. Live webcam streaming on YouTube, this is already coming. You can actually already... this is in beta in YouTube. If you have a YouTube account, you can watch people watch your video. If they have this part of YouTube also, and they're watching your video, it can fire up their webcam so that while they're watching your video, you can watch them. Creepy, just a little, but this is going to be big. You watch Google and YouTube will be the next big webcam site. Guaranteed. It'll be the next big, meetup place. So, take that however you want. So what's UK doing? What are we doing to prepare for this information onslaught? SharePoint, which we've already looked at a little bit. It is sort of a tiered, it's a content management system, which means I have access to sharepoint.uky.edu/studentaffairs. I can then create /reslife and /Kerwin Tower /20th floor. And we can tier down access to just those individuals, so they just have access to those things. So the director of Kerwin Tower could have access to all the floors, to be able to post an update to say, hey, you know, Kerwin Tower's closing, the residence hall's closing on this day, this time, be out. So it's a content management system that sort of lets the users manage their own content in a very simple way. It takes very basic HTML to know how to interface with it. UK's IT Wiki. You know, I think several of the people that are actually working on the wiki are here in the back. So anyway, this is going to be sort of the way, instead of calling the help desk, you'll be able to look on the wiki, assuming you're not kicked offline, to be able to look up problems, screenshots, things like that. I would like to personally see some YouTube videos. Hint, hint. Blackboard, of course, a collaborative student learning environment. I think a lot of people are familiar with this. This is the oldest thing up here. iTunes U is probably one of the newest things up here. iTunes U just came live the other day. This is where students, faculty, staff, anybody can actually download lectures from classes to watch. You know, you want to know what a class is about? You can get on there. Now, right now, I think the only classes that are on there, there's some ones from the dentistry school and from the medical program. There's not a whole lot of content. I'm hoping that we can get this up there.
Are those free or?
I'm almost sure they're free. Yes.
It's free, and any department or group on campus can put anything they want. Student organization, department, a class, a PR activity, and it's all for the public. So anybody in the world can come to UK's iTunes U website and look at what UK has to offer. And I actually work on it, so if anybody wants to talk afterwards, we're desperately trying to get content. So thank you, Jack.
Well, you got this. So iTunes U, you know, it's going to be popular. I mean, think how many people have an iPod. I mean, raise your hand if you have an iPod. Most of you. So there you go. That's going to be a good way students are going to get information from us, from everybody. And then the last thing that UK is doing is sort of an integration with the Active Directory and email. You know, you can already schedule a meeting with somebody, but what if you knew if somebody was in their office right now, or if you could chat with somebody, if you could IM, and let's imagine in this wild world that everyone on campus had instant messaging, that I could instant message anybody by simply typing in their name. Well, if they're running the Office Communicator, you can. Again, you can download this presentation and download it from here on the wiki. So this is something, it's an instant messaging program built for Office, synced up with UK's Active Directory. Put in your AD username and password. You're good to go. You can IM me in my office. There's several people in the help desk that are on. It's very big in the IT community. I expect it's going to get large in other places later. You know, when I need help with SharePoint, which I've needed quite a bit, I message my buddy who's the admin for SharePoint, and I say, "Gosh, I have no idea." And then he messaged me back, and he says, "You still have my book on SharePoint. I can't help you." So okay. So all right. I thought I had click. There we go. Okay. So questions. I want you guys to start thinking about your questions. While you're doing that, I'm going to pull up the SharePoint, and let's look at the questions that were left. I'm going to address the questions that were left online through the survey first, and then we will all right. Okay. So some of the questions that were asked: how do we get students to use technology to interact with each other without them becoming dependent on technology to make their connections? Again, we talked about this earlier, that students they're making the connections in the real world. They're just fortifying them online. You know, this, I think, the students are going to continue to meet face-to-face. Even though the surveys and things, the studies that have been done actually showed that students value face-to-face communication less, that's still their primary method of meeting new people, getting introduced to new people. What needs to happen to convince selection to provide free wireless access that I could tap from home. To check email off campus, I have to take a laptop to McGee's Bakery or someplace else with wireless. First off, if you're going to McGee's Bakery, you can bring me back something delicious. That will help. Metro wireless networks are something that are being tested in some major metropolitan areas. I think Colorado has one. San Francisco, I believe, has one. You know, you're going to be hard pressed to get on these, I think, with the advent of cellular internet. I think cellular internet and metro area networks are going to be competing technologies in the next few years. The downside is the cellular companies already have their infrastructure in place where the Lexington Fayette Urban County government doesn't have wireless transmitters all over Lexington. So, in these hard financial times, it's hard to validate spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on antennas for internet that people can get on their, on their phones. So, I think that's something that's going to be pretty tough to sell. What technology does UK have that could enable us to make our websites more interactive? SharePoint. How difficult would it have been for each individual residence hall on its own to have an interactive web page with chat, discussion threads, facts, events, calendars, etc.? This is, I think, what SharePoint was built for, in my opinion. That kind of thing is to be able to tier the access, to be able to give different halls access, to let them create their own questions, frequently asked questions. Discussion threads are built in. I think it's a fantastic, if you want to call me a fanboy, that's fine. I think SharePoint is pretty fantastic. Will Facebook/Twitter revolutionize the way higher education functions? Should we be utilizing these resources more often in our daily roles? I don't think it's going to revolutionize, but I think, somebody sent me a message. I don't think it's going to revolutionize the way higher education functions. I think it is going to modify and change some things. Should we be utilizing these resources more often? Yes, because I think our students are going to expect it. Because our students are utilizing these things every day. So, for them to communicate to us, I think that's the natural progression, is we have to get onto these services also. What is SharePoint and how does it benefit UK employees? It's like we covered this already. So now I'll open it up and we'll take questions from the audience. Yes, Barry?
Just a point on things like Facebook. I think we found, at least here in the Student Center, we can have people who invite people to a particular event, like to the Catch Den or to a movie or something. And sometimes we'll get like 200 people say they're coming and get 3. So you really have to look at that with a grain of salt for that kind of data.
Right, I agree. Well, like I said, compare the YouTube video hits with people that took the survey. So, we saw, 130, 140 plus watched the video, but only 40 took the survey. So, you see that kind of response rate. But some of the things I think that we can do to improve that are to sending reminders and things like that for events. Because frankly, I think, a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, I'll go to that. But then, Facebook doesn't have a reminder feature that automatically sends something after, oh, don't forget, tonight's that event, or, in 3 hours that event starts. And I think that's one of the keys is reminding students that these things are there, like putting them in a calendar so that they alert students. So, yes, in the back.
In the past, the UK webmaster would decide what we can put on our websites or what's appropriate or how things would go. So are they going to also oversee the SharePoints or the iTunes UK way? How is there going to be a master overseeing that as to what can be posted?
From a SharePoint perspective, to an extent, yes. But, so long as it's in line with the university's acceptable use policy, if you're not putting up anything legal and we'll get the university sued, we don't really care. But there's always space requirements and money requirements that go involved in some of this.
Same for iTunes. Yeah. You have to meet with us if you want to have space on iTunes U. We set up an account for you. We talk to you about what you plan to use it for. But after that, you're on your own to put up your own content. You come to tech support, but we don't, we're not a barrier where you have to go through us every time you want to put a post. We trust the organizations that we create accounts for. So if we find something that's inappropriate, we would talk to you or pull it off, but we don't expect that to be a big issue.
So the students will have this also? I mean, this is all pretty new.
Well, in theory, because all the students have Active Directory accounts, in theory, you could give a student access to edit, but you have to give them the access to do that.
I mean, they would have their own SharePoint. A student could create their own.
There's two things that we have with SharePoint, and one thing is there's sharepoint.uky.edu, which that is kind of a site that affects UK employees mostly only, and what we do for our jobs, what we always do. There's academics.uky.edu, which is a SharePoint site designed for the individual colleges to have their own, and at some point it could be their public-facing website, it could be an internal team site where they share documents. We also have mysite.uky.edu. Everybody has a mysite, whether you've gone to it or not. We haven't really told too many people about it because we're just kind of watching it grow.
You have now.
You see how many people log in. You log into my site, it's a place where you can store your own personal documents, you can share documents. Everybody that has an Active Directory account on campus is turned on for a My Site. If you go to mysite.uky.edu, you log in, it will create a site for you. You can have a personal space, a private space. Under your personal, public kind of view, you can put a blog up, you can put your own wiki up, you can share pictures, share documents. Under your private side, you can have just documents that only you can see, nobody else in the university, not even me as a SharePoint administrator. I can't even see those documents directly, which also means if you delete them, I can't get them back. But there's a lot of stuff that's out there that we haven't told too many people about because we're trying to make sure we can support it.
Yes, Rhonda.
Okay, so I'm going to sound old here. I guess just based on what you just said, it's almost like we're promoting you're living at the University of Kentucky. So it's okay for me to have professional business, but also to have my personal business here with me, and you're actually facilitating that. I guess that seems...
It seems contrary to what you...
counter to what I perceive as what's work world and what's personal.
Well, it's not a place necessarily for you to store your private MP3 documentation and all your pictures from all your family vacations. But, if you have private documents, that they may be work related, they may not be work related. You can put them there and they would be secure, but should you leave the university, they'll be deleted. You're not going to have a way to get those going forward or something like that.
But I think what you're asking, Rhonda, is also sort of blurring the line between what is sort of like something at home that I would do, like post some funny, like, oh my God, I got to get a haircut, or, I find that my daughter working my presentation gives it a sense of legitimacy, and she gets pizza. So, things like this that previously might not have been work-related material, suddenly, they're what really is happening in my life, and they are work-related in as much as I'm working on things at the university. This is my blog that sort of keeps me, when I want to yell about a printer, oh, I hate printers so much, they're the devil, These things, while it's not classically work-aligned, I think that we're going to see more of these kinds of things. I think everybody has a Facebook, and one of the conflicts I hear from a lot of people that have social network sites is, I'm just not comfortable with having a Facebook because, then somebody wants to be my friend that I don't feel it's appropriate, like because they are, for instance, running for student government president. Where do we draw that line? Where is it okay to say, well, should I accept this person as a friend, or is that a conflict of interest? And we could probably have a whole discussion about that. Yes, go ahead.
Not to prolong it, but the conversation also about developing an internal networking community site for all of us to be able to connect with students. I think that's kind of a conversation that's coming up, and that's my concern, is we want to be connected to students, but students also have a tendency to really reveal. And so if students are putting lots of things out there and somebody's not responding to them,
Right.
and it's a cry for help, and I guess those are the concerns I have about not being able to monitor that, and what's your liability if we've said
Right. No, those are.
we're wanting to facilitate this, we're encouraging this, but we know how open it is.
Mhm.
And so what liability, what responsibility, and does not put us in a precarious position to be
Mhm.
responsible for responding.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, I would say that similarly, you know, Facebook could be found liable if a student says, "I'm so depressed, I don't know if I can go on." You know, I mean, that's a horrible thing to say or to think about, but you know, I'm sure that is something that's posted as a status update on some student's page at some point or another. And you know, we have to say, well, are their friends liable then if something negatively happens, you know, to them because of that, or is Facebook liable for enabling their posting or for enabling their friends to view it? And I know university is kind of a wild thing, and I don't see anybody from UK Legal here. I would definitely defer the question away. But I think that's a question that will come up. To be honest, I don't think we'll be able to dodge this bullet. Like I said, I don't think this is something, like I said in the earlier slide, that we can ignore or block or stop. I think that the socialization of sites are going to continue. So, some other questions. Jerry?
With the SharePoint site, it feels a little bit like what we currently would do within our office, where we all have access to the network to share documents and
Right.
work on them. So I guess my question is twofold. Is it to our advantage to start putting all those documents out on the SharePoint, or is there a better way to access our network via the internet so that we are not
Right.
connected to the network directly? We can get access to those documents working from a laptop or something like that.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and tell you this now. Sometime this summer, we will be changing drastically. We will be going away from the Novell server and going to an Active Directory server, much like SharePoint. So you will be able to access your documents in a different way. Now, could we integrate that with SharePoint? Possibly. Do I want you to start dumping all your documents on SharePoint? Absolutely not, because you guys have a lot of documents. I know. So I don't want everybody to start dumping things on SharePoint yet. Wait until we can get our stuff up and going and see if there's a possible way we can integrate that so that it's a functional way that everybody can get to their things in a one-stop shop kind of thing. But that's going to be down the road. We're not even going to be able to get that server going until summer. So just as a heads up. So does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that would be helpful to be able to access all our documents.
Okay.
On the internet. That would be great.
Other questions? Yes.
This may be for you or Catherine, and I she's working on the Second Life. Back when we were talking about that, and Second Life being a fad that may go away at some point and be replaced by another Web 2.0 networking technology, the teams that are working on that now, how easy is it to translate the experience and knowledge that they're getting building the Second Life world, and when Second Life, if Second Life dies, you pick up and say, okay, we have all this knowledge and experience, now we're just going to put it on the PlayStation world. I mean, can they transfer the data? Does the experience transfer so they can build it in another environment quickly?
I would say that the experience transfers. Now, the tools are going to be different, obviously, but the tools are not going to be so dissimilar. They're still going to have to draw an oval for a head, and there's still going to be, a cursor with which to do that. So I think that their experience building the world will allow them to build other virtual worlds quickly. I can't say with any amount of certainty the ability to transfer from one world to another. Actually, I would say that's probably not entirely possible. But I would say building a new world or rebuilding a world in another area would come pretty quickly to the people that did it the first time. The learning curve would be pretty nil, I would say. So.
I wanted to ask another question about Second Life. And I just made not be connecting with students who are using or whatnot, but I still to this day have not had a single student even mention Second Life to me. So I'm curious to know if I'm the one out on the island or most of the folks in this room are still not hearing. I hear Second Life a lot from the 23 to 30-year-olds or older. I just don't. I don't know how relevant it is in use. It's just students.
I don't have all the statistics on Second Life. You might actually have better stats on it than I do, but I can tell you that, like I said, several years ago when Lexington was in the top 5 in the world in Second Life, there was a lot of conjecture as to how we got there. We're not a huge city, so how did our population in Second Life get so big? And one of the prevailing theories at the time was that Second Life is a place where people can experiment socially in a way that is unacceptable in the real world. So, for instance, a student that might be gay or bi or questioning or something like that could experiment socially and have a flirting relationship with somebody in a virtual world and say, maybe I do need to express these feelings openly. And so there was a lot of question that Lexington's gay, bisexual, lesbian community was one of the people that are not openly out. That was one of the reasons that Second Life was really large in Lexington, because we do have a huge percentile of our community fits into that group. So, and I don't know if you can speak any more to
with regard to where Second Life is right now, that's why we're sort of like building it, and we've been trying to sort of like get people oriented, those who at least have been interested in either hosting their courses up there or whatever it is, that they have a lot of an education bent to it. Today we have something like, I do believe it's preventive medicine. They have a meth lab that's out there, and it's actually used for continuing education to teach emergency responders and law enforcement officials and how to go in and deal with that. And of course it's also used with some of their students who are in public health. There was a history or political science course, I do believe, that was meeting in Second Life last semester. There was a discovery seminar that was held over there for freshman students. And initially, I'll be the first to admit, I think that Second Life might be a learning environment that's got a better bent to it for graduate students. And I was a little surprised to see how well the undergraduates had taken to it. And like I said, they were freshmen. And one of their some of their projects in there required that what they had to do was figure out what they were doing. They had to explore. For example, they were given assignments where one group had to go ahead and explore religious diversity. And they had to do it like what's over here in the real world, or in Lexington, or in this region, and then what was out there in Second Life, and they did comparison studies. So religion was one of them, a foreign land was another one, and then I think there was one which was really interesting where it was the Netherlands, specifically Amsterdam. So there's an Amsterdam in Second Life, and then there's one, of course, and what was great though, which really sort of got me thinking, or at least revising some of my perceptions about Second Life, is the fact that the students were all going, we were finding this in Second Life, but it prompted us to do research about this in real life. And then of course they were using things like Google and Wikipedia and everything else to do that. But then we were also able to take that opportunity to say, do you know over at Young Library you have your resource librarians, and this is what you can do with that. So we were able to take it a step. Now once again, exactly where is it going? That's why we're working with some of the instructors who are interested in Second Life, just to see where it would go. We have no idea, Jared. So when you say, I think like when I think it was the registrar's office, when they were anticipating that we might be able to use it as a recruiting tool. I don't know how well it's going to work in that, because once again, you have to get an avatar. There is a learning curve in going with your avatar. I mean, my avatar is there. I don't fly, I don't walk, I drop half the time, and it's pathetic, and I find it kludgy. Another thing about Second Life that, does not necessarily fit in my technical realm is the fact that we build a lot of things and we model a lot of things, whether it's in Poser or Flash, and none of these files can we bring into Second Life. So we're still confined to sort of like your slides and your video and everything else. So once again, you have those restrictions. And we have been looking elsewhere, whether it's your PlayStation or whatever it is, on where you can go in and have these. Because once again, they're just alternate sort of like learning environment.
Right.
That's what it is. I don't think it will ever substitute for what we do, in real time with our students.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the other thing, as you're talking about all this communication stuff. At what point is the communication or the information mundane? How do you make it relevant to the students so that you're not deleting it when you do send them a message?
Right.
So, it comes out like just ties in. You just have to figure out what's appropriate.
Yes. Thank you very much. Do we have other questions? All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. All these... Oh, you clap, but I was just about finished. All this information is located on the SharePoint. Under shared documents, you can download this. There are links to the discussion list. There's actually a little discussion forum that I set up so that you guys, if you think of things later, you can respond and post some questions, and we can have an open discussion to try to integrate this technology into what we do today and to prepare for the future.
I promise you'll have Jack back before 3 years. Thanks, Jack. Thanks to all the IT people.
Yes, thank you very much.